Here is the news. Japan's long-threatened aggression in the Far East began tonight with air attacks on United States naval bases in the Pacific. Fresh reports are coming in every minute. The latest facts of the situation are these. Messages from Tokyo say that Japan has announced a formal declaration of war against both the United States and Britain. The Japanese air raids were made on the Hawaiian Islands and the Philippines. Observers' reports say that an American battleship has been hit and that a number of the Japanese bombers have been shot down. A naval action is in progress off Honolulu, and American transport with timber on board has been torpedoed in the Pacific, and another cargo ship is reported in distress. President Roosevelt has told the Army and Navy to act on their secret orders, has called a meeting of ministers, and is preparing a report for Congress. In London, Mr. Wynant has seen Mr. Churchill, and both Houses of Parliament have been summoned for tomorrow afternoon to hear a statement on the situation.
Coming up, we've got music from Motion Worker, also Lonnie Liston Smith, Brand Nubian, and MC Solar. Later on tonight, Bobby Hutchison, Herbie Hancock, and Miles Davis. It's all part of Acid Jazz Saturday night. Glad you could make it in. Enjoy the sounds.
What type of genres do you usually listen to with music?
Hip-hop, R&B, those are my main.
Yeah, I listen to the radio every time I go somewhere. I always listen to NPR.
Can you elaborate on NPR?
It's the National Public Radio. The local one in Chicago is WBEZ.
Sometimes when I need to calm down, I go on and I listen to classical music. If not, if I'm just chill mood, I just listen to jazz.
Just about any time I'm driving anywhere, I've got the radio on, almost always on a country station.
I'm an old white guy. I listen to NPR a lot. You know, what can you say? And maybe I'll listen to a sports station on Monday after the game to see how bad they think the Bears sucked.
Yeah.
Radio broadcasting, since being introduced before the 1920s, has evolved in a way that has become more practical for the common man to be entertained or even have his own voice heard. Dot-dash radio telegraphy was used experimentally as early as 1897, and then by 1910, it was for general use for ship-to-shore communication. This was not broadcasting, but point-to-point communication. What made broadcasting possible was the invention of the audio tube by Lee DeForest in 1906, the tube permitting modulation of sound. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who took office in early 1933, would become the only president in American history to be elected to 4 consecutive terms. He would lead his nation through 2 of the greatest crises in its history, the Great Depression of the 1930s and World War II. From March 1933 to June 1944, Roosevelt addressed the American people in some 30 speeches broadcast via radio, speaking on a variety of topics from banking to unemployment to fighting fascism in Europe. Millions of people found comfort and renewed confidence in these speeches, which became known as the Fireside Chats.
With the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of deposits and the drawing of checks, I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it was done and what the next steps are going to be. I recognize that the many proclamations from state capitals and from Washington, the legislation, the Treasury regulations and so forth, couched for the most part in banking and legal terms, ought to be explained for the benefit of the average citizen. I owe this in particular because of the fortitude and the good temper with which everybody has accepted the inconvenience and the hardships of the banking holiday. And I know that when you understand what we in Washington have been about, I shall continue to have your cooperation as fully as I have had your sympathy and your help during the past week. First of all, let me state the simple fact that when you deposit money in a bank, the bank does not put the money into a safe deposit vault. It invests your money in many different forms of credit, in bonds, in commercial paper, in mortgages, and in many other kinds of loans. In other words, the bank puts your money to work to keep the wheels of industry and of agriculture turning round. A comparatively small part of the money that you put into the bank is kept in currency. an amount which in normal times is fully sufficient to cover the cash needs of the average citizen.
Well, that proves it ain't slipping my mind.
Pa, you're lazier than that hound dog we used to have.
Which one?
The one who used to lean against the wall when she barked.
Oh, that.
Oh, get out of my way. Go play your radio or something while I get supper.
The golden age of radio between the 1920s and the 1950s birthed new ideas of communication and entertainment that found many families waiting in anticipation for the next broadcast after dinner or after breakfast on a Saturday morning. Such programs included country and classical music broadcasts like The Voice of Firestone and The Bell Telephone Hour. There were comedy shows like Lum and Abner and Stop Me If You've Heard This One. Some shows even originated as stage productions, while other shows were adapted from comic strips, such as Blondie, Dick Tracy, and Little Orphan Annie.
Well, I think it depends on how you determine relevancy. I mean, does it still affect everyone's everyday life? Absolutely. I think just about everyone you talk to listens to some form of radio.
I don't think it's as relevant, but I think it's still relevant.
No. I mean, that was the major form of mass entertainment at that point. Today, people watch television. We don't listen to radio shows anymore. Although I've listened to old radio shows, especially when I've been driving on a long trip, and you find one of those, and it's actually really good entertainment.
I wasn't born there, so I can't say.
Well, I don't think it's as important because people have a TV versus just a radio. They can see someone's face and like it's more personable.
Again, I think it's, the way I use it for news or light entertainment. If people seem to be really big into their music, they tend to go with their own music and hyped up system, so they don't tend to follow radio for that if they're serious music people. And for long form entertainment, I just don't think it happens in radio anymore.